Hey everyone, welcome to the Shameless podcast. I'm Srinadeep.
I'm Hanya.
I'm Abby.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Emily, and we are the founders of SHAMEless.
Hi, Abby from SHAMEless here. Welcome to another episode of the Founders series, where the founders of SHAMEless share their personal stories. Today's episode, I will be sharing my personal story about my experiences dealing with loneliness for the first time. Be sure to stay tuned till the end, where the other SHAMEless members will discuss their own thoughts on this topic. Hope you guys enjoy. Hi everyone, I'm Abby, and today I will be sharing my story about the times when I struggled making friends and my experiences feeling outcasted and alone. I will also give some personal advice to those who may have gone through or are currently going through similar experiences, as well as discuss with SHAMEless my thoughts on the concept of friends. I grew up in a really small private school in Texas. There were only about 300 kids from grades pre-K all the way through 8th grade. And I went there until 7th grade. So each year I built relationships with the same people in each grade. And so I was able to build a really solid friend group. So the friends that I made at this really small school were all different from me, yet we became super duper close. And this friend group that I formed, I could always rely and depend on. So I like to say I felt pretty fortunate, and I'm grateful that I was able to grow up in a very close-knit environment where there really was no such thing as conforming to social norms. There was never that pressure of having to feel like you have to fit in. And I was rarely ever in a social situation where I had to ask myself, will I be able to make friends, or what if I don't know anyone? But this all changed in 8th grade when I had to move to a different state. I remember not really stressing at first about having to meet new people. I actually thought it would be a piece of cake. I thought I could easily make friends because I was able to make such great friends in Texas. But I transferred to a huge public school. This middle school was about 1,400 kids, and it was just an entirely new environment that I was placed in. And I can say I was a small fish in a big pond. And you may wonder, how could a country bumpkin Korean American who grew up in a predominantly white private school in Texas, how would someone like that, how would they survive moving into a huge cosmopolitan city and find friends in a school almost 5 times larger than our old one? I remember walking into the first day of school just feeling so overwhelmed by all the people, all the unfamiliar faces, not knowing a single one of them. And all these people, I saw them all the same. I had no idea, who were the toxic ones, who I should stay away from, or what kind of crowd I would be able to jive with. I would say the reason my experience transferring schools actually wasn't too bad at first. It wasn't a complete disaster because thankfully, before the first day of school, there was a newcomers meeting where all the students who were transferring from different places to the school could meet each other. And so everyone at this newcomers meeting, they were all in the same boat as I was. So I was like, yes, I will be able to meet people who are going through the same thing I'm going through. And so I was really lucky to meet this girl. I'll call her Kathy. That's not her real name, but Kathy, she was someone I met at this newcomers meeting, and she was super outgoing. It didn't take much effort for me to start talking to her because she was really easy to talk to, really friendly. That day we exchanged numbers. We found out that our schedules for the year were pretty similar. We had the same lunch periods. And so that first week of school, Kathy and I kind of stuck together. We went to each class. We both didn't really know anyone, so we tried our best to work together to meet new people. Any friend that she made would eventually become my friend. So it wasn't as bad as I thought. And thanks to Kathy, I was able to really open up to people really fast and make some good friends. But outside of school, my mom, she got me to try out for a sports team. And this time I'd have to be independent. I wouldn't be with Kathy. And obviously at school, I was in classes by myself, but this this new environment outside of school was going to be different than I thought. So I went to the tryouts and I got on the team. And the first practice, I tried to be as outgoing as I could. I tried to get to know the girls. I sparked up some small talk with them. And right off the bat, I could tell that a lot of them were already really close with each other. Some had played this sport with each other before and had been on the same teams, or they had grown up in the same school system. But I thought this will be fine. I can just build relationships with them through this season. But the third week of the season, I fractured my ankle severely. I still went to the practices, but I sat on the side, and I didn't go to the tournaments while I was injured. And week after week, I kind of sat there and I watched the girls play together. And in this sport, team bonding is really, really important. That part is what I missed out on in the beginning. And I started to grow really distant from them. And so 2/3 into the season, I was finally able to play again. And I got back on the court, and I found it really hard to talk with them. I don't know what it was. I got all shy when I was around them. I got really quiet. To paint the picture for you, before practice, we had to go there 15 minutes early. That was a rule that was set by our coach. And in those 15 minutes before practice started, just if you picture just a group of girls huddled together in a corner and then one girl sitting off to the side by herself, I was that girl sitting by herself. And those 15 minutes before practice, I just remember, were the longest, most excruciating minutes. It felt like hours of just kind of being lonely, not being able to talk with the girls. So I started stalling at home before I had to leave for practice so that I could avoid those 15 minutes. Sometimes I ended up showing up at practice late. The times of me being alone like this occurred not just before practice, but also at the tournaments. After the games, the girls would split up into their little groups and go eat at Chipotle or some fast food restaurant for dinner or for lunch. And I just remember after the games, I didn't really have anyone to ask, and so I would just go home. Another example is we had this bonding activity where we went to a bowling alley all together as a team. The moms thought it would be a great idea for everyone to get closer, but we played like one round of bowling at that event, and then the girls split off into their little groups. Some went off to the arcade, some went off to the food bar. I kind of floated group to group, not really clicking with any of them, and kind of just floating around by myself at that bowling alley. And then after, when the time was up, some of the girls went outside to take Instagram photos, and I just remember waiting there by myself, waiting for my mom to pick me up. That was a pretty bad experience. And so the next time we had a bonding activity, I was like, I'm sorry, I cannot go. And so I made up an excuse not to go. These were all kind of really small things, small moments of me feeling a little bit alone, a little excluded. But the peak, I feel like, where I felt the most isolated from them was when we had a tournament and it was out of state. And this meant that we had to stay in a hotel together. During these type of tournaments, you're supposed to get, really close with your teammates. You're sharing a hotel room together. So I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be great. Even though the season is pretty much almost over, this is the time I have to finally try to become close with these teammates. So the team was split up into groups, four teammates per hotel room. And that night, after having a team dinner, we all went into our rooms. I was getting ready for bed, and the girls in my hotel room, they started goofing off a little bit, and I remember they were Snapchatting some boys, and I remember very vividly they were wearing crop tops and sweatpants, and I hate to say this, but they called themselves, this was like their version of being a hoe. And so they started taking pictures in the bathroom mirror, and they referred to them as hoe pics. I was kind of observing them, and I kind of saw that they were doing this. And as I was unpacking, I thought to myself, okay, well, if I want to become close to them, I have to at least try. I have to make some sort of effort. And so I'm going to have to go out of my comfort zone. And I remember I stood up from where I was unpacking and I said, I can't be the odd one out. And I like put on a tank top and I didn't have sweatpants, but I put on like my PJ pants. And I was like, hey guys, can I join you? And they were like applauding. They were like, yes, Abby, come join us. Come be a hoe with us. And it was almost like it was an achievement, like a milestone that I was finally deciding to do what they were doing. And so this was a really uncomfortable moment. And I kind of remember everything. Like we took pictures and stuff, but I felt really uncomfortable. I just I wanted to run out of the hotel room and go to the room my mom was staying in, but I couldn't. So
Yeah, I also had a similar experience. So I really wanted to join the people that I was with and join what they were doing, but what they were doing wasn't like necessarily a respectful thing to do in like a public area. And in that moment, I had to think about what was more important to me. I had to think to myself if it was more important to do something that I was not comfortable with by doing the bad thing that the group was doing, or being like,
doing what you felt was right.
yeah, and doing what I felt was right.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to decide in that moment if you want to be swayed by what the majority is doing or go with your gut feeling what you feel is right. But being able to stand your ground and do what you feel is comfortable, it takes a lot of strength and courage. And so that is something that I didn't really have at this specific moment, but I definitely know now what I feel comfortable with. That night, I decided to go to sleep because we had a game the next day. So I remember kind of crying myself to sleep that night in the hotel bed by myself while the other teammates, they didn't want to be loud because they knew I was trying to go to sleep. So they went into the balcony of the hotel room and they goofed off until late at night. And that moment, I felt really, really alone. And I wish the trip would be over, even though it had just started. The next day, we played and we ended our tournament early. So we decided to go to the beach because our hotel was actually a beachfront. And so I got into my bathing suit. I was pretty excited because I thought we would be able to take some good team photos at the beach, and I I thought it would be really fun, a fun bonding activity. So we walked up to the beach to the fence where the fence splits the parking lot and the sand that leads to the beach. And so when we got there, the girls stopped at that fence area and they took Instagram pictures for an entire hour there, not going past that area. And I just saw them one by one taking pictures with each other. And I got the idea that, okay, we're not doing a team photo and none of them are probably going to want to take a photo with me. So then I just headed to the beach by myself and I felt pretty excluded. It didn't get better from there. We went to a surf souvenir shop after that and we all kind of split off. I went to the shirt section while some girls, they went off to the bucket hat section, some to the seashell necklace section. And so we were all kind of dispersed in this surf souvenir shop. And I went up to the cashier to buy my items. And I realized I looked around me and the whole team was gone. I realized they had left me in the store and hadn't realized.
How did you feel in that moment when you realized that everyone left?
In that moment, I hadn't experienced anything like that before where I had been left by myself. I was kind of shocked. I wasn't sure what to do. So I just went out of the store and I tried my best to try to find them. And I found them in a frozen yogurt shop. I walked in and I noticed they were there and I said, "Oh, you guys are getting frozen yogurt?" And they're like, "Yeah, come join us." And they didn't really acknowledge that they had left me.
Yeah, so I had a similar experience. This actually happened twice to me, and I was with a group of people that I thought I could rely on, and it was kind of like scary to know that they would leave me in a place that wasn't necessarily like a place that we knew our way around. So, yeah, like I totally relate with the feeling of like loneliness.
It made me feel like I'm not important to them and I'm not close enough for them to really care. The next day, when the girls asked if I wanted to go swimming with them in the indoor pool at the hotel, I told them that I was just going to go out to eat dinner with my mom. After this tournament was over, to be honest, I kind of gave up trying to be close with the team. I mean, I guess you could say that I gave up even before that tournament, but after this event, kind of just accepted the fact that I would not be able to become close with them. The events that built up from the beginning of the season to the end, I had felt the most lonely that I had ever felt in any situation. And this was really new for me. So it was hard to deal with at first. I do want to make it clear I don't have anything against the girls that were on this team. I don't think in any way that they were mean or toxic. I just think I had a hard time becoming close to them because I didn't feel comfortable with the things that, maybe they were talking about or that they did. But for some reason, even though the girls on this team didn't represent all the girls that I could ever be friends with, I still had this mindset. I was convinced that if I couldn't become friends with them, I wouldn't be able to become friends with anyone. And I questioned to myself multiple times why I was so shy and quiet and why I had such a hard time to laugh with them and to talk with them and to just hang out with them. So I was really hard on myself about that. I remembered my old self in Texas who was pretty outgoing and didn't have trouble opening up to people. But I think there were a lot of different factors that led to why I ended up this way on this team. I mean, I was out for 2/3 of the season. A lot of the girls had known each other for a while before this season, and it was my first time adjusting to a new environment, and so I wasn't really sure how to deal with everything.
I wanted to add that I really like how you were able to, I know how you said that you were questioned yourself and wondered why you were so shy and quiet around them, but being able to look past that and then consider the different factors and also not hold any anger or any grudges against the girls. I think it's really great how you're able to kind of, not be so hard on yourself for so long and look past that.
Thanks a lot. Those are really encouraging words. Thank you.
And I also wanted to add that a lot of times when you feel excluded, the first thing that comes to mind is that something's wrong with myself. It's because of me that I'm not fitting in. But, you can't always mesh with everyone because everyone has such different personalities. So I think don't doubt yourself and don't feel discouraged because there are people who will mesh with your personality. And I think that the world is so diverse and vast that, you can't fit in with everyone.
For sure. Like that is actually a really big takeaway that I took from this experience.
If you're part of like a team or a group and you already have like a set group of friends or something, and then you see like someone on the side who sits all alone, sometimes we come to like the conclusion immediately that that person wants to be alone and that person just wants to sit by themselves, which is why they're not talking to anyone else. But sometimes it's just hard and they want to talk to you, but you're just not like letting them in.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice.
You never really know what it feels like to be excluded until you experience it. And I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I've been on both sides and I never really considered the other person's thoughts. And now that now that I have experienced being the one excluded or being the one alone, I do wish that I had included that person or just at least reached out to them. So I think this is definitely a good story and perspective to bring in.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times, even after you've experienced being excluded and then you fit in a group, sometimes you can forget about how that feels because I've definitely done that before. So just be aware of your surroundings, be mindful of other people's feelings, and never assume anything about anyone.
And I can definitely relate to your experience. Like I'm on a sports team right now and it's hard because the upperclassmen have already been in that team together for a few years. And like the people who, like, I'm obviously not the fastest runner, you know, like in that team, and all the people who are at my pace decided to stay home for COVID reasons. And so during practice now, I run by myself because there's no one at my pace. So it definitely is hard because you see all these people ahead of you, you see all these people behind you, but then there's like no one right next to me. And so I do feel excluded when I'm running, and especially like running is a pretty hard sport. So it's like having that constant motivation next to you is like a good reminder. But I think it's hard, but it also gives you like a sense of like you can find motivation in yourself, and maybe like sometimes being alone is not the worst thing you can find.
I definitely feel like by experiencing being alone, I was able to grow mentally stronger.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I had a comment on what Hania said. I really like how you like explained everything because you said there's people in front of you, there's people behind you, but there's no one next to you.
I know.
And that just like describes how like everyone seems like they have their place no matter where it is, but like in your place where you are, there's no one next to you.
I feel like in literally all the situations in high school and beyond, there's like 95% of the situations we're put in is where we don't know anybody, and everyone else is already friends with like other people. And I think it's like just an obstacle we all have to learn how to face, and you know, just try to put ourselves out there, because in the end, like, I don't think anybody really cares.
Yeah, because like in high school, it's like everyone's on their own and everyone's just trying to survive.
I mean, this sounds weird, but technically everyone is kind of thinking about themselves. I don't know, like when I was going through a low phase, I just thought I was the only one going through this, but after hearing all of you guys' stories, I feel like, I don't know, I was thinking too much about myself and not thinking about how other people might be going through the same situations as I was.
I also experienced something similar, but for me, I transferred to a new middle school in 8th grade too. And I remember I was so insecure about like my weird quirks and like how I was different from everyone else. So I completely changed myself and my attitude and my personality. And for like a whole year, I just faked a persona because I really believed that no one would like me if I just showed who I was. And I think because I had a fake persona, I gained a lot of fake friends. I realized that being myself was okay, and that once you are yourself, people like you attract people like you, and that's when you really find your group. So just don't change yourself and be your authentic self because that's your best self.
That's really good advice, Emily.
Yeah, I think one thing that I do instinctively, which I think is good and bad, but whenever I don't like make friends with people, I blame it on them and not on myself. I always like say like, you know, they're not, you know, compatible with me, or like I don't like what they're talking about, or like I make excuses like that. So I think it's a good thing that I don't change myself for them, but then at the same time, I completely like, cut off connections with them, and like I don't want to be friends with them anymore.
I have something to add to that. So I kind of do a little bit of both. Like kind of I sometimes have resentment towards others, but then also I'm hard on myself. And the reason why I have trouble opening up to certain people is because I box people into categories of those that I would be able to hang out with and those that I think I wouldn't be able to hang out with. And having that already set when you're meeting someone can affect how you get to know them.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one more comment to that. I think a lot of times, we always focus on what we don't have, the people who we aren't friends with, that we forget about the friends that we do have. And I think it's important to always focus on what you have around you and to appreciate that and use that to the fullest instead of focusing so much on, what you don't have.
Yeah, I relate a lot to that because there's always this one person around me who's like friends with everyone, and like everyone just like is like, this is the nicest person. And I felt a lot of pressure to be that person because I wanted to be someone that everyone can approach and just be nice to everyone. And so I would feel myself like constantly trying to just hide my feelings and be neutral toward everything so that I can be friends with everybody. But then I realized, like, that's not how I want to be. Like, I want to have opinions. I just simply don't want to be that type of person. And so I can definitely relate to like wanting what you don't have, but in the end, I think your authentic self is the most valuable thing.
Yes, yeah, I think that's really important. And one thing that I wanted to bring up was that it's really easy to lose yourself and lose your authentic self when you're trying to make friends with other people. If you like try to change yourself to be compatible with them, or try to change your opinions or hide your feelings just so that you can fit in with a certain group. And coming back to Abby's story, um, it's just really empowering that Abby realized that she didn't have to change herself to fit in with a certain group.
Abby, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I really got to know a whole new perspective or a whole new side of you. And I think that side is just as strong and just as amazing as the side I knew before. I also wanted to add that, when you tell people that I'm dealing with loneliness, they kind of don't take it seriously because a lot of people say, well, loneliness is something that everyone goes through. Everyone feels lonely once in a while. But I think because so many people feel lonely, and just like having a discussion, all 5 of us had some type of thing happen where we felt lonely. And because so many people experience loneliness, we should pay a lot more attention to it because it is something really serious. And
Yeah.
It has like an emotional toll on you.
yeah, it can really change and impact a person.
Yeah, definitely.
It seems like such a simple or like not a big deal, and like there are bigger problems in the world, but problems shouldn't be weighed against each other. Like people's struggles are their own struggles. It shouldn't be that way, but because people often compare other people's struggles, loneliness is overlooked, I feel like.
Thank you guys so much for listening to my story today. I feel like a huge weight was lifted off of my shoulders being able to share this with you guys. If anyone wants to share their story with us or wants to continue listening to our stories, we just want to put out there that this space is supposed to be a super safe and vulnerable place for you to have a voice and speak out about your experiences. We are not doing this to be this is not a pity party so that people can, feel sorry for us. It's not a gossip session to call certain people out. So I hope that through this podcast, it will inspire you to share any story that you feel would help other people and that other people can learn from and relate to.
Yes.
Does that conclude the
Yeah.
podcast, guys?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yay!
yes,
Abby.
yes.
Woo! It's so great.
Yay!
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the SHAMEless podcast. I hope my story will reach those who feel like they're alone, because I'm here to tell you that you are just on a journey to becoming a stronger version of you. Stay tuned for our next episodes, where the other founders, Dylan, Hania, and Srinidhi, will share their own personal stories. See you soon!